Hello guys and welcome back to Birmingham Fan TV. Guys, I just want to firstly apologise about the absence. I know it's been two and a half weeks since we last did a video, and that's my fault. Personal reasons, anybody that knows me knows I've had a tough couple of weeks, and job-wise, health-wise, I've not been great. So it just needed to take a little bit of a back step, but guys, I promise you now we are back with a bang, and this one is going to be a little bit of a different video, guys. If you can, just before we get into the video, smash the like button, guys. It only takes you 2 seconds, and I promise you it means more than you'll know. Comment all your thoughts down below. I know a lot of you guys have sent in your thoughts on social media over the last day or so. Let us know, again, in your comments, who wins it for you, who is definitely taking the crown if you didn't get involved on social media, and whose do you agree with? Is there anybody's team that you agree with, anybody's player, goal, or moment, match of the decade? Let us know down below. If you haven't already subscribed, guys, do so and get involved with Birmingham Fan TV. So let's start off with goal of the decade. And I think that you can look at it in two different ways. How important the goal was, or how good the goal was, technique-wise. So I'm going to go with two. I'm going to go with one for importance, one with technique. And I think that with importance, we've had a lot of important goals this decade. You can look at the cup-winning goal over. You can look at the cup semi-final and the cup quarter-final against Villa and West Ham. So many important goals in there. The any of those ones on the last days, you know, Cadiz and Shea Adams to stay up against Bristol City, and you can also look at the goals you can also look at the European goals as well. So Chris Woods, and any of those goals, Chris Burt, Wade Elliott's goal in Maribor. And we've had a lot of important goals, but I'm going to go with the one for me that had the biggest knock-on effect for Blues, and that was Paul Cadiz against Bolton. And some of you would say, oh, well, the winning cup goal against Arsenal was the most important. Yes, but for different reasons. I think that if we'd have gone down that day at Bolton, I think the ramifications for the club were huge. And for Caddy to score at that time, you know, that type of play, it was just made for him. And I think that he just popped up at the right time, right place. The scenes that in the stands, on the pitch afterwards were absolutely incredible. So I'm going to go with Caddy for that one. And I just love Paul Cadiz as a character, as a player. He was fantastic, and he was part of one of our best teams since we've kind of come out of the Premier League. So that one goes to him. And in terms of quality, this one's a little bit left field, but I think that we've scored quite a few good goals. Terrell scored a few in his time when he was here. Obviously, Clifton Bell's known for hitting some screamers. But it's difficult, but I think the one that stands out for me, I did travel to this game. It was away at Middlesbrough. You might have already clocked on. And I think we only had about 350 fans there that night. We still lost. It was under Clark. But Emery Hughes' goal against Middlesbrough was absolutely phenomenal. The strike on it was unreal. 40 yards out must have been, or close to that. And it takes it for me. I think it was an absolute screamer, and I think that I couldn't not put it in there. So those are my two goals of the decade, and let us know what yours are down in the comments below. In terms of a match of the decade, I think, again, we've been treated to some fantastic games at St Andrews, away from home, this decade. A lot of them do come at St Andrews, admittedly. Again, you can look at the cup final, you can look at all the European games, last days, survivals. But for me, the West Ham game takes it for me. And I think that it was such a special evening at St Andrews that night. I think that the crowd really got us over the line. You know, to be 2-1 down from the first leg, it wasn't the be-all and end-all. But then to go 3-1 down at half-time, and it looked dead and buried. I think we all still believed, but it looked an uphill task, and we just came out and we changed the game. Zigic came on, and we were a different beast second half. And the performance, the manner of the performance, the intensity, and we got on top of them, and they were scared. They were running scared by the end of it. And they didn't want to be out there after that first goal. They just wanted to be over and done with. And we got on top of them. And I think that game for me was magical that night, under the lights. We never really achieved anything. So to do it in that manner as well was special. So that game takes it for me. Now moving on to player of the decade. And we've had some fantastic players down St Andrews over the years, and especially over the last 10 years. I think we've had a lot of legends that have maybe engraved their name into the folklore and the history books of St Andrews for years to come. And I think that this guy, while it was also a controversial figure, did so much for Blues over the years and really made important goals and moments at important times for Blues. And he kind of gets overlooked, I think, for us. But I think Nikola Zigic, for me, is my player of the decade. And the reasons are, you've got to look back. We bought him in 6.5 million. Yes, his wages were ridiculously high. But you look at, he scored quite a few goals in his opening Premier League season. He scored in the winner against Villa. He came on and changed the game against West Ham. He scored the first goal in the cup final. He scored in the playoff semi-final against Blackpool, which we ended up losing, but he almost got us back into it. I think he scored the first of that. He scored lots of goals in that season and was part of the European campaign team. And then he played really well under Lee Clark when actually the team was faltering. He was one of the star men, shall we say. Scored plenty of goals in the Championship. I know people say, wow, he was earning 60k, but yeah, he stuck around and he could have just said, I'm going to sit on the bench and sulk. But you know what? In all fairness to him, he gave 100% every time he was out there. And obviously, he scored the first goal, which gets overlooked at Bolton as well, to keep us up. So I think Ziggy for me. Now moving on to our final talking point, and it is the team of the decade. And I know a lot of I know a lot of pages have been doing this, especially Birmingham City's own account. So guys, hopefully you've gone and submitted on there. I think it's already been drawn, and it is slightly different to the one I'm going to go with. But hopefully, I've picked a team that has done this decade proud, and hopefully you will look at and say, yeah, I agree with that. Any of them you don't agree with, let me know in the comments. Any of the things previously that you haven't agreed with or you think are slightly different in your mind, let me know in the comments. I want to read them and see what everybody thinks. It's quite nostalgic for me, and I quite enjoy that. So in goal, we're starting with Ben Foster. I think it could have been any one of four. You've got Thomas Kuszczak, you've got Darren Randolph, Jack Butland, Ben Foster, even Boas Myhill. And I think goalkeeper was one of the hardest choices. But for me, Foster was unreal. For this one season we did have him, he made all the difference, especially the cup final, got man of the match. Was fantastic in the cup run. The Premier League season, he was our player of the season for me. And I think Craig Gardner won the player of the season, but Foster could have easily taken it. And for me, he was absolutely outstanding. We've had lots of good goalkeepers, and I think Randolph to miss out is unlucky. Thomas Kuszczak was fantastic, but yeah, Foster for me was the best. So moving on to right back, and again, you've got a lot of choices. You've got Stephen Carr, you've got Paul Caddis, you've got Maxime Collin, you've even got Jonathan Spector, who was fantastic. But for me, Paul Caddis takes it for me. Difficult to leave Stephen Carr out, but I think Stephen Carr, like a few others, made more of an impact just before the turn of the decade. And I think that Caddis, for the 4 or 5 seasons he was here, made a huge difference, was consistent, was fantastic for us, a character, and obviously nobody forgets that Bolton goal. So yeah, we're going to go with Caddis at right back. The two centre-halves I think were actually relatively simple for me to pick out. There was one where I ummed and ahed over who to pick. The first one was an easy one, it was straightforward, it was Scott Dan, and I think he was absolutely fantastic. Before his injury, you could see how pivotal he was. When we did lose him, we went down, and we really struggled without him. And I think he was a unit for us at the back, and 3 million from Coventry, I think it was an absolute bargain, and was a colossus next to Roger Johnson in obviously the team that finished 9th, and then the cup winning squad. Obviously he missed out on the final and the semi-final second leg, so he was the first choice. And then the second one for me was a toss-up between Michael Morrison, who had served the club for many years and has been a fantastic player for us, and Curtis Davis. But I did go with Curtis Davis in the end. I think for the 2 seasons we had him, the playoff team, the European team, and the first season under Clark, he was excellent. And he even played a little bit of a part in the back end of the McLeish era. I think Davis was a severely underrated defender, still is in my eyes, and he takes the second place. And at left back, I think again it's tough, but we actually haven't had that many great left backs. It was between Ridgewell and Murphy, but I went with Murphy simply for his European campaign and the season we had under Houghton. I think he scored about 8 or 9 goals in that season, and for a left back it was absolutely phenomenal. So he takes the left-back position for me. The first of the midfielders on the right-hand side, easy choice. Well, I say easy. It's easier when you see how I've lined the team up. But I've gone with Seb Larsson. I don't think many people can argue on the right-hand side how important Seb was for us. His deliveries, his energy, his defensive work was fantastic, but also such a danger going forward as well. It was difficult for me to leave Chrissy Burke out on the right, but Seb Larsson was absolutely fantastic, and he takes the position up on the right-hand side. The two centre midfielders, I had a few discussions with people, and I have left Craig Gardner out, and it's caused a bit of controversy because people have said, "Oh, don't you think Craig, especially in that 11 season, carried us?" And I think, yeah, he did. But the two midfielders I've gone with were absolutely colossus for us. And it is Barry Ferguson is the first of the two. And I think that he's my favourite player for some time. I absolutely love him. I think his ability on the ball, his composure, everything he brought to the team, with a gritty, sort of fiery side as well that we all saw, and obviously played through the cup final with broken ribs, and was a fantastic servant for us in the 2.5 years we did have him. So yeah, Barry takes the first spot, and Lee Bowyer was the second, and I think that it's hard to separate them, to dislodge them. Again, Lee Bowyer scored so many goals from midfield for Blues. Such a powerhouse in midfield, so much energy, and I think the pair of them can't really be chopped and changed. So I had to put the two of them in. So it's Barry Ferguson and Lee Bowyer in the middle for me. And then on the left-hand side, I've cheated a little bit, but I felt it would be unfair to leave him out. And it's Chrissy Burke on the left. And people are going to say, well, he never really played on the left. I know he didn't, but he can play on the left because he could cut in on his right foot if I really wanted him to. But the season we had him in Europe and the playoff season, I think it was 11 goals and 14 assists. We haven't seen the likes of that since. What a player. And then the 2 seasons under Clark, he was also very, very, very good. Probably played a part in 12 to 15 goals, either goals and assists in both of those seasons under Clark, and was the main player for me. And to leave him out would have been harsh, but I couldn't leave Seb out either. So Burke on the left was hard because obviously you've got Dimmy Gray, you've got Redmond, but yeah, we're going to go with Burke. And then up front, difficult decision for me, really difficult. But obviously I couldn't leave Zigic out, obviously being my player of the decade, and again I've explained why he was so important to Blues in this decade. But partnering was difficult as well, and I think it was between two. It was between Kevin Phillips and Marlon King. But in the end I made the difficult decision, and I've gone with Marlon King. For the 2 seasons Blues managed to have him, he was unreal in front of goal. Absolutely unreal. I think I swung towards King because Kev made more of an impact in the 2009 season where we got promoted under McLeish, and maybe in the first part of the 9-10 season in the Prem. So maybe he was the previous decade, whereas King was firmly in this decade. And I think I went with King up front simply because his goals were massive for Blues. So that is my team of the decade, led by Alex McLeish, who would be my manager of the decade. Difficult not to give it to Chris Hughton or Gary Rowett, but I think that Alex McLeish won us a cup, and he got us to 9th place in the Prem. Yes, he took us down. Yes, he jumped ship, which we can't forgive him for, but the achievements that he amounted at Blues were absolutely fantastic. So guys, that is my everything from this decade, my top moments, top goals, everything from the decade. Let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to comment down below. Like the video, guys. As we said, it only takes a couple of seconds, but it means an absolutely massive amount to the channel and the guys here that work tirelessly behind the scenes, guys. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and it's been a pleasure in this decade being with you Blue Noses, and obviously starting the channel at the back end of the decade, and hopefully we have a fantastic decade in 2020 going through, and obviously I hope Blues get back to the promised land of the Premier League, but only time will tell, guys. And I'll see you soon for the Wigan preview. Keep right on.